Gene Gotti's being pushed to become the #2 guy with the Gambino family, and little Nicky Corozzo, the new consigliere, if the information being put out there is correct. So we're going to discuss what's being said, and I'll give you my thoughts along with a quote from Angel Gotti about the possibility of her uncle Gene making a move on the Gambino family. Welcome to Real Mob Stories. This is your host, James Proctor. Thanks for being with us today. Before we get started, I'd like to ask each of you to hit the like button. Also, if you're not a subscriber to Real Mob Stories with James Proctor, I'd love for you to subscribe to the show. And without further delay, on to our feature presentation. So, Scott Burnstein put out a story on gangsterreport.com earlier today stating that a source has told him that Gene Gotti was being considered for the #2 position in the Gambino family and that little Nick Corozzo is campaigning for the consigliere position. I'm only going to talk about certain aspects of the article because it's behind a paywall. So if you'd like to read the article in its entirety, please go over to Gangster Report and subscribe. I'm sure that Scott Burnstein would appreciate, your subscription. So anyway, what's being told is that Nicky Corozzo is pushing for consigliere. Apparently, the role's been vacant for the past 6 months or so. The previous consigliere had been wanting to kind of step away or actually just spend a little bit less time in the limelight. You know, he's getting older. And so we see here that according to the source for Scott Burnstein, Nicky Corozzo is wanting to become the consigliere, and he has a lot of experience in the administration of the Gambino family. So we'll talk a little bit about his history, what he's doing, and if it's true, why it would be probably a good move in some ways, because he is definitely well respected. So the current underboss is wanting to take a lower profile role with the family, which would make things open up for Gene Gotti if this source is correct. According to the source, both have been providing advice and support as senior statesmen for the Gambino family. Is it possible they're making a move to be part of the administration? I know that Scott's source believes so, but we have to look at the reality of the situation. And let's start with Gene Gotti first. You know, Gene Gotti, he's 78 years old. He got out of prison in 2018. So he's been out going on 7 years now. I mean, the thing going for Gene Gotti is that he's definitely well respected. He did his time as a man. He went to prison in 1989 and he spent 29 years in prison. He had gotten a 50-year sentence. He got put away on the conspiracy and drug conspiracy charges, and he was on trial for like nearly 3 years, and finally in 89 he exhausted all the appeals and everything and ended up going to prison where he'd been in for 29 years. Many people saw Gene Gotti have that he's got leadership skills. There are some that even felt that he had more leadership skills than even John Gotti. But Gene Gotti was definitely level-headed. He was someone that was not flashy like his brother John, and a lot of people saw him as someone that they could go to, that he was, a good, like an advocate or someone they could go to that could go to John. So anyway, when he went to prison in 1989, he was a capo regime. But then once he went to prison, Peter Gotti took over his crew and they moved or bumped down him to soldier because of the long prison sentence. And then, we know that he got out of prison in 2018. And if you remember, back in 2018, people thought that he was making a move there. We had this just the crazy situation, the sad situation of Frank Cali. Frank Cali was killed in front of his house. There was so much speculation and rumors that it was some sort of inside job. And a lot of people were saying, "Oh, that's Gene Gotti, that he's trying to make a move on the family." But then we find out that it was like this loner, this kid that was mentally ill. He was a loner, and he took out Frank Cali. And so one thing about Gene is that, ever since he's gotten out of prison in 2018, he's kept a low profile. And I actually spoke to Angel Gotti about Gene today. I wanted to know what she thought about this story. Was it possible that, Gene was making a move? Not that she would necessarily know, but she does know enough about her uncle to at least maybe give some insight. And what she said was that she doesn't believe it at all, mainly because of his lifetime parole. And that is true. He is on lifetime parole. He can't be seen around other felons. I don't know how he could be active in that type of role as an underboss. At 84 years old, do you want to be in that role? One of the things that we know about the current administration is that you have a boss that's not he's pretty much on the not sidelines, but he stays very quiet. And then you have more of a front boss that guy's very out there. He's someone that's been around for since the 70s. And this guy spent time in prison as well. But the front boss is very involved in everything going on. And my worry is that he's going to end up getting pinched pretty soon with the stuff that's going on with the Gambino family and some of these pinches that are happening, especially in Staten Island with the LaForts. And so the thing is, it would be really risky for Gene Gotti, in my opinion, to be involved in the administration of the Gambino family. And so why would he even do that? One thing we know, he doesn't need the money. He's able to relax now. He just lives on his own. He doesn't, bother anybody. I think he's happy being retired. And the thing is that he would know more than anyone that if he was to take such a role within the Gambino family, that the feds would be all over it, because if you got a Gotti involved, the feds are going to pay attention to that because it's high profile. And we know that the feds, they love these high profile gangster cases, even though they're not even that big anymore. They're not, they love to have them because it's saying the public is fascinated with. And also it helps as these FBI guys go to Congress asking for more money. And the thing is that, he's 78. Does he want to get pinched and end up living the rest of his life in prison? I just don't see how he can get away with it in 2025 with cameras everywhere. How's he going to meet with people? I just feel that he would be taking a huge risk, and it doesn't even make any sense to do that. And, we'll see what happens, but Angel Gotti doesn't believe that he would be coming back. All right, so we go to Nicky Corozzo. Nicky Corozzo, he's actually 84 years old. He got out in 2019 from his last prison stint. Very well-respected guy. The Corozzos had they had three brothers, I believe, that were involved in that life. They also had another brother that was not involved in life, but was an actor. He passed away. We also know JoJo passed away in December, just last month. And Nicky and JoJo were always the two highest profile guys, or the ones that had the most. I would say probably the strongest Corozzos in the Gambino family. And the loss of JoJo Corozzo. JoJo was involved quite a bit as he was a consigliere. He was on the ruling panel. He was well respected. And then you have little Nick, pretty much the same way. But what's interesting is that Little Nick was actually a rival to John Gotti. They had a falling out back in 1986 for a while. And what happened is that Corozzo was pushing to get promoted to capo regime, and he didn't get that. Even though he was making a lot of money for the family, he was in good standing with the family. He'd do anything that he was asked. For whatever reason, John Gotti did not want to promote him to a capo regime, and this caused issues between Gotti and Lil Nick. And so in the 90s, John Gotti ends up getting pinched, and you had a ruling panel at that time. We know also Lil Nick was doing a lot down in Florida with a crew, and so you had him, you had Jojo Corozzo, and you had different people, Lenny DiMaria. You had different folks that would come in and out of that ruling panel. You had at one point, you had John Gotti Jr. is kind of the acting boss. Then then for a short period, then it went to actually went to Peter Gotti, and Peter Gotti was the official boss after John Gotti passed away. And then Jackie D'Amico spent a lot of time as the acting boss, and the Corozzos got along very well with Jackie D'Amico. And so Lil Nick, though, couldn't stay out of trouble himself. So he ended up getting in trouble in 2008, believe it was that Operation Old Bridge. There was a lot going on between, there was the Sicilians trying to make a move back into good graces with the Gambinos. We know that back in the 80s that the Inzerillos and those guys pretty much got wiped out. So most of them either had to come over to the States, or they were pretty much slaughtered. And so Reina and a lot of those that were in power back in Sicily, they went to jail, they went to prison. And so the Inzerillos started to try to make a move again to become prominent again. And so they were trying to regain those ties back to the Gambino family. And we know that I believe it's Tall Pete Inzerillo. He's someone that is pretty powerful still, someone that is involved with the the Gambino family today, and is someone like Lorenzo Menino respects, talks to a lot. He's so you still got some of those ties. But the point is that Lil Nick ended up going to prison back in 2008, and he got out in 2019. So do you think that he is actually pushing to be the concierge? The concierge at least is I think, a less involved role. I mean, it's a very important role. It's someone that needs to know the rules. It's someone that has to be an elder statesman, someone that is respected by both the rank and file and the administration people. And I could see that to a point that Lil Nick would be well respected by everybody, but he's also 84 years old. I don't know how Lil Nick's health is. He may not be capable of fulfilling that role. We know JoJo, who just passed away, he had a lot of issues health wise, and I believe he even had some issues with dementia towards the end of his life. So we have to see, if Lil Nick would come back. Just my personal opinion, I could see Lil Nick maybe coming back more likely than Gene Gotti. That's just me. And I know Lil Nick is older, but at the same time, the role that they would want him to be involved in as a concierge, I think it would fit in well with Lil Nick. Supposedly, Lil Nick and Gene are elder statesmen today, and that they're giving advice to the administration. If we're to believe the sources, I don't know, but Nicky, very well respected, but Do you think he'd want to go back in? My answer's maybe. But, we have to look at the mob. It's not what it once was. Law enforcement is got an upper hand on the mob. You have to worry about all the informants. The mob, the folks in the mob, they're more fearful of the government than they are of, you know, their fellow mob members, because the mob isn't killing people today. I mean, they still, can be brutal. Let's don't let's don't pretend like there's not violence still, but the murders that don't really happen anymore. I mean, it not saying it couldn't, but for the most part, at least in New York, it's not something that's happening. And I do think that you do need elder statesmen. I think that the current generation of mobsters did not have good mentors. They don't know the history of the family. You look at people like Mikey Scars, and he knows that history. Mikey Scars to me, obviously he ratted and all that, but if it wasn't for that, he'd be a perfect concierge in my opinion, because I think he has that personality where he can work with different people and the different families and understands history, understands the rules, and that's something that you need. And little Nick could do that, but does he want to go back to this? Again, he would be a target as well. I don't know his parole situation, if it's lifetime parole or if it's just I'm thinking maybe it's not lifetime, but I don't know if he's still on paper at the moment, but at the same time, I don't think that he would want to risk his freedom, especially at 84, because if he gets pinched, that's probably that's probably it for him. He'll probably die in prison. So you're getting a lot of attention, as well as I mentioned, what's going on in Staten Island with the LaForte cases. That's drawing attention. Really stupid stuff that was going on that. With the gambling ring and involving police and women and all that. I just felt that it didn't look. It had a bad look, in my opinion. So is it possible? Yeah. But personally, I don't think either one of them's going to go back in. But what do you think? If you were Gene Gotti or little Nick Corozzo, would you want to be involved again after all these years? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and God bless you always.